On this edition of the program, all the latest on the big, beautiful bill, a rocky road as we head into a pivotal weekend. We talk Hogg with Bill Scher, David Hogg, when it comes to the DNC and what Democrats should focus their energy on the most when it comes to Donald Trump. Folks, it's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Welcome, everybody, to the Politics program for Friday, May 16th, 2025. Your old pal, Justin Robert Young, joining you. We're going to talk politics. We're going to talk everything that's coming out in Congress. We're going to talk mixed inflation news. Donald Trump wrapping up his jaunt throughout the Middle East. A lot of newsworthy things happening there. And we will welcome Bill Scher. Before we go anywhere, though, I want to let you guys know of something that is really fun. And for anybody who is a fan of rock music, metal, hardcore, math rock, or just wants to hear yet more of my voice, as I speak to you today on Friday, May 16th, there is a release from a band that is close to my heart. I've been friends with the lead singer, Carson Pace, for a long time. He's been a part of our community, our Diamond Club community, for a very long time, since he was a teenager, and he has grown into a full-fledged rock star. And so it was my absolute honor a few months ago when he was putting together the concept album for his band, the Callous Cowboys. It's a big concept album. It's called I Don't Want to See You in Heaven. It is centered around the idea that this is an artifact that has been dug up for a future museum of failure. And when he thought of a voice that should guide people through the museum, it's your boy. And so you will hear on 2 tracks of this album, which is out today, I Don't Want to See You in Heaven by the Callous Cowboys, my voice. It is available everywhere. Stream it on your streaming platforms. But if you're into this kind of stuff and you want to support somebody who has been a part of our community for a really long time, head on over to Bandcamp. That's really what matters the most for their financials. They're heading out on a big nationwide tour. It is something that I've really been happy to be a part of. I've listened to the album a few times, and despite the fact that this isn't my natural genre, I think that they are just gobsmacked in terms of talent. So there we go. Callous Cowboys, I Don't Want to See You in Heaven, available now. I bet you weren't expecting for me to lead the show by plugging a metal album, but I am, because it's a really good album. I very much enjoyed it. And so now I will naturally seg from my encroachment on Anthony Fantano's corner to my encroachment on Jake Sherman of Punch Bowl's corner. And I will give you what I have heard about the big, beautiful bill. All right, so let me lay out the stakes here for you, because we had Matt Laszlo on the Wednesday show to give you a general idea of where we are with the big, beautiful bill fighting. And we said during that show that what was remarkable is that a lot of things have stayed behind the scenes. That has changed. We are now here at the bloodletting time as the bill is being marked up. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, wants this out of the House by Memorial Day. So we are moving toward that pretty quickly. There needs to be votes in key committees today on Friday, specifically the Budget Committee. And so he's got challenges. We discussed on Wednesday the SALT fight, state and local tax deduction. We saw that break out into the open. All that nice stuff out the window. Mike Lawler, Marjorie Taylor Greene, fighting on Twitter, going back and forth. We have also seen some of the budget hardcores being very persnickety about whether they are going to vote for that out of the Budget Committee. So, my expectation as of now is that this will not be voted on in the Budget Committee today, Friday. While everybody's listening to the new Callous Boys album, I Don't Want to See You in Heaven, they will not be voting in the Budget Committee. Chip Roy is just going to be jamming out to Two-Headed Trout instead of voting on the Budget Committee. What is going to happen next, after they eventually square that away, is they're going to advance that to the Rules Committee, and then the Rules Committee is going to tee up a final vote. What is said in Congress often is that even if you are going to vote against the bill on the floor, it is up to you as a team player to vote it out of your committees. Yes on the committee, no on the floor. So I will expect this to eventually get to the floor. The question then becomes, what is everybody's issue? And what you are seeing right now, as I am recording this, is a lot of anger. A lot of people who don't like the bill as it is written currently, including this. A Friday House Budget Committee vote on the GOP mega bill is now in jeopardy. Representatives Ralph Norman, Josh Breachin, and Chip Roy are going to oppose it. The bill includes tax cuts, border funding, and a Medicaid overhaul. Hardliners are frustrated that the Congressional Budget Office won't release a cost estimate for key parts until next week, raising doubts about the bill's savings. Some conservatives fear that the Medicaid changes could push non-expansion states to broaden coverage. Chair Jody Arrington says the vote may still proceed, while Speaker Mike Johnson insists it will, despite continued GOP infighting and unresolved cost concerns. Anybody that you talk to in the middle of this right now has a mile-long stare in their eye. They have seen the horrors of war, right? They're working on very little sleep. They're trying to put this together. They're doing their best. There's a lot of frustration on everybody's side, and they knew that it would. This was a known process. In fact, the reason why there is one big, beautiful bill is because they knew that they could not go through a process like this multiple times. This is the reason why they're only doing it once, because they know it is going to be painful. And so it is. But I'm still bullish on this passing in a form that is close to what we have talked about. And that would mean that if there is any kind of capitulation to the SALT people, currently it's at 30K. Could it go to 40K? We don't know. Maybe you trade the 40K for it sunsetting at a certain point. There's all sorts of slides and knobs and dials that you can turn and flip to make sure that everybody can go back to their district and sell the deal that they got to the people that need to vote for them. But the reason why I'm still bullish on this passing is because even though there are many people that have not committed to vote for the bill, I believe there are only 3 hardliners who say that they are absolutely not going to. And one of them is Thomas Massie. He's just not going to ever. So check that off. Thomas Massie, not going to vote for the bill. But Daddy's not home. The reason why things have gone smoother than expected in the House of Representatives up until today, as we talk about this, is because Donald Trump has leaned on the people that he needs to lean on. It's the reason why Mike Johnson is the speaker. It's the reason that they got the budget. It's the reason why they have done every step of this process up until now. And right now, Donald Trump was in Saudi Arabia, then he was in Qatar. Today he's in the United Arab Emirates, and he's going to continue with this tour. But eventually he's going to be back. And it's at that point that Donald Trump's full focus will be on getting his entire agenda passed through the House. What we have heard then is that J.D. Vance, who has a relationship with the Senate, he begins his charm offensive to get it passed in the Senate via reconciliation, and then eventually they are able to sign it into law. So they have a few senators that cannot vote for it. Ron Johnson said he's not going to vote for it. That's fine. But they're going to figure out a way to do it. It's hard when you talk to people that actually are involved in this because they are living and dying on every fight and angry behind the scenes text message and group chats and meetings and tweets. They're living and dying on all of it. But from my vantage point, somebody who has watched this process in good times and bad, I have watched bills that were doomed. I have watched bills that were jammed through within an inch of their life. The Pelosi special. This seems manageable. I guess it just seems, I just have not seen, I'll put it this way. When bills are doomed, politicians hold press conferences to talk about how it sucks. Nobody's having a press conference right now. They're talking to reporters. Psst, 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 psst. Olivia Beavers. Psst, 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 psst. Jake Sherman. They're talking to reporters. I'd be talking to our girl Katie Stetch, the Wall Street Journal. Talking to Matt Laszlo, who's on the show on Wednesday. They're not holding press conferences. And the reason why they're not holding press conferences is because they don't want to get blamed for tanking Donald Trump's agenda. So they will attack the bill. They will attack the things that they want in the bill, but they have not come out and said the big, beautiful bill is bad. Now, Democrats have, but Democrats were going to. One more thing that I've seen, for whatever reason, there's like confusion over. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security for people that make under $150,000 are in the bill. Now, they sunset in 4 years, but I'm telling you this right now, if they actually happen, they will be approved forever. Because nobody's going to want to take it away. If you give a mouse a cookie, this is the thing with entitlements. And by the way, this used to be the thing that drove Republicans crazy. Republicans were crazy when they were like, oh, no, we don't have this thing. If you give working class people, which is what this is a giveaway to. And let me just say clearly, it is a giveaway for no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security if you make under $150,000. It is going to be something that Republicans will be able to signal in the future as a reason why Democrats getting control of Congress is a bad thing. Because I don't think it's ever going to go away. Ever. But we'll see. So, to recap, I Don't Want to See You in Heaven by the Callous Cowboys. No vote on the Budget Committee, in my opinion. I don't think it's going to happen. So instead, I would suggest to the members of the Budget Committee, maybe blow off some steam and listen to I Don't Want to See You in Heaven by the Callous Cowboys. Now, Democrats can also listen to I'm Not Going to See You in Heaven by the Calistal Boys, but they've got their own issues. And we're going to talk next week when it's closer to the book's release or when I can read it, all about this original sin book. It's created a lot of stir in Democratic circles. It is pointing out apparently to the most vibrant degree that we are going to see the decline of Joe Biden. We'll do our best to get the authors on the show, but the biggest thing that is affecting Democrats now is their fight over David Hogg. To talk about that and larger Democratic strategy, we bring in one of our favorite voices on that side of the aisle, the one and only Bill Scher. Ladies and gentlemen, it is always our great, great pleasure when we can welcome back to the program, Bill Scher. How you doing, Bill?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I had to take last week off due to jury duty, so I am out of the pen. I'm like a bull charging out.
What's the verdict?
We found that the plaintiff did not prove her civil damages, and therefore is awarded no money. So, in fact, I really would like to countersue her for my time because it was a frivolous case and I greatly disliked everybody involved about 15 minutes into the proceedings when I knew I was going to be there for the rest of the week.
But you did your public service. You know another layer of how the system works.
Oh my God. Yes, I do. I wonder why it was a jury trial. Because I wonder it from a strategic position on why a bunch of millionaires who were having a dispute over building a multi-million-dollar house next to another multi-million-dollar house would think that a bunch of people, some of which were taking the bus into the courthouse every day, would care or think about X, Y, or at least in the clinical way that they were looking for. It's hard to do that when you are in that situation. And also from the legal perspective, just why does anyone need a judge decides? A judge says, look, here's the evidence. The judge decides, move on. This doesn't need to be a jury trial. I don't
know what the rules are there. I did grand jury duty last year.
Oh no.
I mean, it's different because you're banging out like 20 cases over the course of several weeks.
Oh, okay. And
most of the time, it's pretty cut and dry. It's not a reasonable doubt standard.
Yeah.
So, is this enough to at least warrant going to trial? And you're getting a one-sided presentation from the prosecution, so you're almost always going to be like, "Sure, go ahead."
Go ahead.
There was one time I tried to stop an indictment, not for the whole package, one charge amongst several, because the evidence of the general crime was pretty obvious. But the guy had been pulled over by a police officer, and he took off. He sped off in the car.
Yeah.
And there's video of it. So there's no
caught in 4K. Yeah.
But they wanted to charge him with assaulting the officer. If I remember the charge, and the argument was that he was being reckless and how he took off.
Yeah. And
I was like, I don't see that in the video.
What is the different version of how hard he hits the gas, right? Was there a more reasonable way for him to hit the gas and evade arrest?
Right. I mean, I saw no evidence he was trying to hurt the officer. He was just trying to leave. And I almost won. It was because it's only a majority vote to indict. It's not unanimous.
Yeah.
And I lost it 13-10. It was close. I need to flip two more.
Just to give you a sense of this case that I was in, part of it revolved around the charge from the plaintiff in this civil case was trespassing. She was saying what trespassed was dust and Tejano music. That was their trespassing charge. For the record. Well, That is ridiculous. What is not ridiculous, well, sometimes it's ridiculous, is our modern political world. And I want to talk to you about two things. One is, of course, the ever-evolving situation through the White House. And then I want to talk to you about what's going on at the DNC. Which of those two do you have more on?
Let's start with let's start with DNC. Why not?
DNC.
Yeah.
David Hogg, somebody that first, of course, came to light after surviving the shooting in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in Broward County, where I was educated. He has been a part of various different charities and political action committees, and a few months ago was elected vice chair of the DNC. He then said that, oh, by the way, my side hustle, which was my main hustle before this became my most prominent position, I'm going to keep doing it. And that involves primarying sitting Democratic candidates. There has been a bunch of sturm and drang about that. And now it does appear that there's going to be a revote for his position along with another one, not because they believe he is going to be bad at his job or detrimental to the DNC, but because they did not follow diversity rules when they were voting initially. Bill, your thoughts?
Well, I don't have a lot to say about the procedural thing. And it's a revote, so it's not like he can't win again if he chooses, if he has the support. But you gotta pick. If either you're in the party infrastructure and you're not putting your thumb on the scale when it comes to primaries, or you want to encourage primaries and you're picking a faction within the party. It's one or the other. Yeah. And primaries exist. You're allowed to compete in them. You're allowed to encourage them. You're not inherently a bad person if you're doing that. But then you're not the umpire. You're either on a team or you're an umpire. And how many people lost their gosh darn minds in 2016 accusing the DNC of putting their thumb on the scale for Hillary over Bernie? And if you're mad at the party leadership, you're going to say, "Now I'm going to infiltrate it so I can put my thumb on the scale and go the other way." That doesn't work. I'm not even arguing that the DNC did that in 2016, but I know that's the charge. Yeah. So I just don't understand why David Hogg wants to have it both ways. If he wants to reform the party with a different crop of nominees, then play that role. And he has the stature to play that role without being a DNC vice chair. But if you want to be a DNC vice chair, then you say that's for someone else to do the primary thing.
There are other ways he could do this, right? Like, he could just say, I'm no longer an active participant at Leaders We Deserve, which is a super PAC that he wants to use. He could still do it behind the scenes. Everybody could know it, and he could just be like, no, I don't have any active element of this. There's only so many people that want to be involved in these kind of party level things, both in terms of action committees and the party. He probably wouldn't be the first person to be involved in the party that also had some connections on some level to an outside organization that had more of an agenda. The difference is that he wants to come out and say, I am wearing two hats at the same time. And his compromise this week was, please build a firewall for me. So any of the races that I am involved with Leaders We Deserve, I'm not going to have any kind of information on the DNC. I don't know what he thought was going to happen. I think it's been very good for his profile. He certainly has gotten more media opportunities. He's been yelled at and alternatively congratulated by party luminaries like James Carville and Donna Brazile on various different outlets. But I don't know. This entire thing, it just belays to me that him being elevated to that position was probably the wrong call from the jump for reasons beyond what he has done here. And getting him out by any means necessary is probably a good move for the Democrats.
Well, well, to your point there, he could be giving oxygen to, younger, feistier candidates indirectly from being DNC vice chair without having direct involvement with the PAC. I mean, a firewall doesn't make any sense. I mean, you'd say,
that is a ridiculous solution.
I mean, he's still his face is the face of the PAC. You go to Leaders We Deserve website, it's his name and his image on the website.
Yes.
And there is arguably some extra credibility if it is, DNC Vice Chair David Hogg, who's associated with
founder
the PAC.
Yes, founder.
Right. No firewall changes that element to it.
Yeah.
So that's really a non-starter. But he could sever his formal ties with the PAC and still give speech after speech about the importance of attracting younger voices who are willing to fight and not kowtow to the establishment while being DNC vice chair. There wouldn't be any rules about him talking about it in an oblique way and making a kind of case for certain kinds of candidates without being literally involved in the PAC. And that to me would be the value. I mean, the whole point of him being in the leadership is to say, hey, we're not a bunch of stodgy old coots. We have fresh blood in here, and there is value in that. So I mean, there's a way to do it that is just a little more elegant. That he's being kind of stubborn and not choosing to take that path.
And I'm going to just note here, I don't know for sure. There have been charges out there that we are assuming that Leaders We Deserve does put the full force of the money that they get into these races, and it is not unduly taken up by administrative costs. I'm just going to note it.
People are saying.
We are assuming that this PAC does that. Other people have maybe said that David lives a little high on the hog for somebody.
This is, I mean,
things.
Well, this is sort of a broader, thing about just sort of PACs in general. Mm-hmm. Do PACs really help with these kind of candidacies, or would it be better to just find a way to informally recruit the candidates and then encourage contributions to the candidates directly? The PAC is not supposed to coordinate with the campaigns. And so they can only give so much money to the candidate directly. Otherwise, they're basically doing their own sets of advertising and get the vote operation. And there's a certain amount of evidence that that kind of arrangement can be kind of bulky. It didn't help Ron DeSantis become president of the United States.
It did not.
This is going to a whole different, road. But I wrote an article for the Washington Monthly about joint fundraising committees. How a loophole has essentially been indirectly created by inaction by the FEC. So a joint fundraising committee. A joint fundraising committee is supposed to be just that. It's for fundraising. It's not for spending. It's for fundraising.
Yeah.
And so the candidate and the party and a PAC can come together to jointly fundraise through the committee and then divvy up the money. But the people on that committee are not supposed to dictate how the money gets spent by the candidate. And so what happened at the tail end of 2024 is there was a Republican joint fundraising committee and they do ads. They're like 99% ad for the candidate. And then like a little disclaimer at the bottom, like fundraising for the joint fundraising committee. So it's really kind of an advocacy ad. And the Democrats are like, hey, FEC, can you rule on this? And they're like, nope, we can't. We're deadlocked. We have evenly divided. Republican, Democrat, can't do anything. And so as long as that stands, you have this loophole. So unless there's actually a court case about this, but who knows when that's going to get adjudicated. So assuming we're at status quo, where this is sort of just not resolved formally, don't be surprised if you start seeing joint fundraising committees taking a whole mess of money. And the super PACs, which used to be the boogeyman, but arguably have not been as big a deal as people thought they were, because they don't their ad rates are much higher than the candidates rates directly, and so it's still better to give to the candidate directly. Donors with joint fundraising committees really come in big in 2026, and that becomes the new thing.
I would not doubt that. One last thing I have on this, and that is part of what people are missing, especially if they're sympathetic to some of what David Hogg has said publicly, for which I do agree on at least part of his message, that there is room in this version of the Democratic Party as we talk on in 2025 that deserves to be shaken up. There is obviously a desire from voters, independent voters or latent Democratic voters that didn't get off the couch in 2024 that would like to see some kind of bloodletting from things that frustrate them. Even understanding that to me is a valid concern. When you are actually running the party, the thing that actually matters with a lot of these candidates is just how much money you're going to get from the party, how much coordination you're going to get from the party. Those decisions are finite. There's only a finite pool of that to go around. And oftentimes in these House races, we're talking about a lot of really hurt feelings when people do or don't get what they want or expect from the party because they believe they have a chance to win. And especially in a thin margin, that's going to matter. You need every element of objectivity to avoid that kind of disharmony. And if you are inviting it into your house by somebody loudly saying, I'm playing both sides, you're getting the exact opposite.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a long-standing frustration in Democratic circles that the official party campaign arms, DNC, Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, they don't give money, particularly at the tail end of the campaign, to the more progressive candidates.
Yeah.
And it often gets charged as because they don't want progressive candidates, but it really is like they're just trying to win. And if they're being kind of cold and calculated at the end, like, I think this guy just isn't going to get across the finish line. I'm not going to go blowing $1 million on that guy when I can blow $1 million. I can spend $1 million on a guy who's got within a point, Yeah. So there's sort of those last minute, tough calls where people get cut loose. And often it falls, the people that get cut loose are the ones who are more ideological, running a bit more uphill in a redder place. And that gets sort of translated as the party doesn't like progressives. So there's that longstanding frustration that's always out there that will probably, be a perennial thing that people complain about.
Well, this is something that always gets complained about. Like right now, the DCCC put out a list, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, of the seats they believe are in play, right? Yeah. That was a broad list that we probably don't actually think. We probably assume that in the DCCC, there's probably a list that's a little shorter of what they actually believe that they are going to spend money on. This is a publicly facing list. And then from your point, once you pick candidates, get through primaries, see what the landscape is, that list is going to change. And it might expand a little bit, but it's probably going to get cut a little bit based on where they believe the battlegrounds really are. And that's where the money gets spent. But all of those involve people. All of those involve staff. All of those involve, donors. And all of those tend to create hurt feelings when you don't get what you think you deserve from the party.
Right. So that I think that tension's always going to be there.
Always.
I think the David Hogg thing is more, there's this somewhat newer frustration that these baby boomer Democrats just can't let go. They're older and older, and they can't give it up. And we need fresh blood. We can't have this stodgy looking party going on TV. We blew it with Joe Biden. He hung around too long. Dianne Feinstein, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, all the things come into the mix. And what I find strange about, obviously there are particular examples. I eventually got to the place where I thought Joe Biden had to go, even though I defended him for a long time. We talked about that. There are cases like Dianne Feinstein where someone's clearly... That was a
watershed moment for me in 2024. Maybe more surprising than the debate was Bill Scher pulling up stakes on Joe Biden.
I try not to be too rigid. When new evidence presents itself, you move. But in general, generational change happens organically. People retire or die. And younger people move in. Like it will eventually happen, maybe slower than you would like, but it's going to happen. And in this midterm, the ball game is not about replacing, Jan Schakowsky, the 80-year-old Chicago area congresswoman who just announced her retirement last week, but she was facing primary challenges. Like, that's not what is going to determine who controls the House in 2026. What aging Democrat in a safe blue seat? Yeah. Like, that's not the ball game. The ball game are the incumbent Republicans in the swingier areas, and maybe you can expand the pool of what's swingy based on broader political dynamics and Trump's popularity. And the Democrats running those races are, by definition, going to be younger. You're not going to have a lot of 80-year-olds running for those races. Yeah. So you have kind of a built-in chance to bring in fresh blood without having special projects. Yeah. It's just it's just the time in the cycle. You're running as a minority trying to take a majority, trying to take out incumbents. Younger people are going to be involved in that project almost by definition.
It also comes from candidates. It comes from candidates and it comes from issues. And I think that those are a symbiotic relationship, that you've got to find a thing that you are pushing that your party right now would not have the gumption to do. And if you attract enough support from your prospective voters on the Democratic side, for example, then you are going to benefit in a primary and you might benefit in a general. Like, this is something that does not happen from the party level. In fact, I would submit that every time that a party tries to decide where the future of the party is going to go, it almost universally goes terribly. It is usually a bad decision.
Let me give you an example of this, which is not intuitive to a lot of people. I've read about this in the past. Military veteran candidates. Yeah. Who on paper seem great. And I'm not saying they're not great. This is not a criticism of military veterans.
We honor their service.
In a vacuum, like having that line on your resume is good. That is a net plus for almost any candidate. Where it gets complicated is when you find a military veteran, probably someone who just completed their service. So they're relatively young, and they're moving back home. So they haven't been home in a while because they've been serving. And so they haven't run for city council before. They haven't volunteered for the PTO before. They haven't done the highway cleanup volunteer duty before. They're not rooted. They might say, well, I grew up here 30 years ago, but they haven't done stuff locally lately. And there's a lot of, I ran the numbers on this. A lot of those candidates lose. They're losing in the primary, losing the general because they're not rooted. You need someone who's got a track record in that community. And so, follow that logic to the 25-year-old eager beaver political activist who wants to shake things up, but just hasn't been around long enough to develop the relationships on the ground in that district. My congressional district is pretty big. You got to cover a lot of turf to win that race. And it's hard to parachute in when you haven't done a lot of the building blocks that you need to develop a profile in that district. So it's not that it's the sentiment that you need to freshen things up is not wrong, but often there's a lack of patience involved for some people, which, what, you're in your 20s. If you really want to be in Congress someday, obviously there are examples. There's AOC, there's Maxwell Frost. The stars can align for certain people depending on the circumstances. But generally speaking, earn the stripes by doing things locally, whether it's an elective office or other kind of community service. So people know you as someone who is involved in and cares about that community. You don't have some sort of side agenda, but you care about your immediate community, and you've proven it with your labor. That to me is the best path to winning an elective office.
This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you have to go if you would like to support this show economically. Kick me in a little money, a little coin, it'll be nice. You get 2 bonus episodes. I mean, I'm not just taking your money for no reason. Although we do have some people that I'm going to settle some scores in the credits at the end of this show. But in general, if you would like to pay me money and you would like to get bonus episodes, 2 episodes each and every week, then head on over. Take Politics Seriously. It comes on over to our Substack. You get that. It's going to be a good time. Let's get to some news we didn't cover on the show. Mixed inflation news. Here's the good news for the Trump administration. April's economic data shows no signs of recessionary or inflationary shock that was forecast in pre-tariff surveys. That's good news. Retail sales inched up 0.1% after March's revised 1.7% surge as consumers front-loaded purchases ahead of expected price hikes. The GDP relevant control group slipped 0.2%, but services spending, evidenced by a 1.2% rise at restaurants and bars, held firm. Meanwhile, these are all indicators for whether or not we're in a recession. Meanwhile, the producer price index fell 0.5% with flat goods costs and a 0.7% drop in services prices, the steepest since 2009. Analysts say tariffs are currently squeezing profit margins rather than lifting consumer prices. But that may change. Walmart announced their earnings on Thursday. They were good. E-commerce was profitable for the first time in the company's history. But their CFO had some ominous quotes. Quote, "We're wired for everyday low prices, but the magnitude of these increases is more than any retailer can absorb. It's more than any supplier can absorb. And so I'm concerned that the consumer is going to start seeing higher prices. You'll begin to see that likely toward the end of this month, and then certainly much more in June." He went on to say that while he was encouraged that the tariff conversation had lowered from 145% in China to 30%, that is still higher than they would like to see it. He also mentioned that 2/3 of Walmart's products are domestically sourced. So anything that would be affected within that 1/3 that is not. And that China is their biggest trading partner for foreign sourced products. So we'll see. We'll see. But the one piece of good news that you would look at with the Trump side is that people didn't go into shock and cut back on spending when the stock market was legitimately in total free fall. We had those stomach churning days that was happening during during April, post-Liberation Day. Everything is rebounded. But if people didn't shut things down then, what would need to happen if they were to pull back their discretionary spending because they believe that we are in a recession? So that's the side. Walmart says higher prices. What do higher prices mean? On what items? We don't know. We will find out as we move along. The Supreme Court appeared dismissive of Donald Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship, with justice signaling it's likely unconstitutional. That was pretty quick. The majority of the hearing that happened today, or at least the arguments in the hearing, wound up discussing nationwide injunctions, a legal tool used by lower courts to block Trump's policies. Conservative justices suggested limiting these injunctions to individual plaintiffs or clearly defined groups, preferring class action lawsuits if you would like to enjoin more people. Liberal justices, especially Ketanji Brown Jackson, warned that limiting injunctions could allow the government to violate rights unchecked. While the court may act directly on birthright citizenship, debate continues over balancing judicial oversight with executive policy enforcement. Nationwide injunctions could be limited by the Supreme Court. So, a few thoughts here. Number one, immigration people, we're talking Pat Buchanan, Ann Coulter, and everybody else, Stephen Miller, people that have made this a huge issue over the past 30 to 40 years. They have wanted the Supreme Court to rule on this forever. Well, they did. And it sounds like the Supreme Court is like, no, birthright citizenship is birthright citizenship. That's what it means. That's it, and that's all. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of wiggle room, even from the Clarence Thomases of the court. And so that is what it is. However, one of the things that has severely vexed the Trump administration is that regional courts have issued nationwide injunctions on some of the executive orders that they have passed. And so it does look like there will probably be some kind of legal hemming in on that. What? When? That's going to come when the decision comes down. Finally, let's talk about Trump out in the Gulf. President Donald Trump said the United States and Iran have sort of agreed to a nuclear deal. Only in Trump's America can that be an actual headline. He described negotiations as serious and ongoing. Trump stressed that Iran must never develop nuclear weapons and hinted at broader demands, including halting terror sponsorship. That would be fascinating to track. And while he is talking about tracking where the money comes from for terror sponsors, maybe he should ask around to some of the countries that he's been over the last few days, like Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the UAE. Oh, I don't know, just an idea. Iran expressed willingness to limit uranium enrichment to civilian levels and accept inspections if economic sanctions are lifted. That means Iranian oil, for the record. But insisted that enrichment itself is a core right that they would protect. Trump reinforced military options that were on the table if talks fail, meaning that we will allow Israel to blow up your reactors. He also spent his time visiting U.S. troops in Qatar, rejected past U.S. interventionism, and praised Gulf states' economic progress. In Abu Dhabi, he received the UAE's highest civilian honor and celebrated strengthening bilateral ties. Trump contrasted his warm reception with Biden's criticized 2022 fist bump with Saudi leadership, saying that Gulf nations want to shake hands. His remarks reflected confidence in his diplomacy while leaving key deal points undefined. There are no deals with Iran, and an Iranian deal, that would be monumental. Of course, the biggest thing that people would look at is how does Trump's Iran deal differ from the Obama Iran deal that Trump campaigned on ending and it wound up ending. Let me real quick get back to the Saudi fist bump because Trump made a big deal about it. And there's been a lot of criticism. We're going to get into Biden criticism next week because I want to center that around the book. I'm now, you want to know what? This is the thing that I want to be. This is my new role in life. I'm going to be news sheriff, and specifically news cycle sheriff. All right. Because I'm very vexed. I get vexed when a news story goes on too long or is too short. And so like this Qatari plane, the more I read about the Qatari plane, the more I don't think the Qatari plane is really all that big of a story. We could pay for it. We could not pay for it. It's going to be the same thing. I don't think Donald Trump has not defended the idea of taking it as soon as he leaves office. And so I don't expect him to, because usually with stuff like that, he defends his ability to do it. And so if that's the case, I care less about it. And so, okay, it was a topic of conversation for 2 days, 3 days. We're on Thursday. We're getting into 5 days. Done. Okay, we've talked enough about it. Unless Donald Trump says, my plane, I touched it and I said dibs. I called dibs. Unless he says that, then I don't care about the plane. Same thing about the Biden stuff. I'm not going to do 2 weeks of the book. All right, I want to read the book. I want to know what's in the book. I got a lot of questions about the book. So I don't want to get into it. I don't want to do a whole thing on every Democratic politician has to do the walk of shame about whether or not they said that he was a functional person. I have specific issues with that. We will specifically get into it when I have a sense of what's in the book. And by that, I mean, I need to read it. I want to read it. I'm not doing this thing off excerpts. I will say that Mark Halperin, who has a new podcast on Megyn Kelly's network, he has rehabilitated his career. He has emerged successfully from the Me Too shadow realm. He broke the story that Joe Biden was not going to run for president anymore. He has been on the forefront of this. He has now become a leading media voice. And he has shredded Jake Tapper, who's the co-author of this book, along with Alex Thompson. And so I don't want to get into the Biden side of it. Let me get into the journalism side of it, because that is a story I have endless appetite for. I have questions about how much Jake Tapper worked on this book. I have questions about why Jake Tapper is the lead face of this story when Alex Thompson of Axios is the one who very publicly was taking all the slugs, all the arrows, all the vitriol, all the venom when he was actively reporting this story. A rarity, I might add, in DC, along with two women from the Wall Street Journal. Jake Tapper did the opposite. Now today, Thursday, as I record this, he was out on CNN doing another hit as a guest on CNN about his book. And this time he said, well, you know, I look back and I have humility about how I covered the story. This is the kind of stuff that's probably going to prevent me from getting an interview with these guys. But I feel bad for Alex Thompson. Now, maybe he's a shrinking violet. Maybe he doesn't want to be on television. Maybe he's happy that Jake Tapper, he is so battle scarred by what happened in 2024. He wants Jake Tapper to be the face of this. But I do think that it takes away from the message of the book, which, if the reporting is as good as some of the excerpts have suggested, and it does push this story forward, I believe Alex Thompson should be getting a lot of credit. And the conversation shouldn't be about whether or not Jake Tapper was a run-of-the-mill, rank-and-file, Democratic-leaning television anchor during 2004 or 2024. I mean, probably then too, but I don't know where he was working. Although Jake Tapper did once write for Washington City paper that he dated Monica Lewinsky while all that was going down. Different thing altogether. Anyway, I feel bad that this isn't about his reporting. There we go. That's the journalism angle. We're done with the update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com, where you need to go. Get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. And now, here we go. Back to Bill Scher. All right, let's take a look a little bit to the midterms and the large scale kind of like battlefield for which it will be fought on. We will close our book on the Democrats and move to the White House. But before we do, let me just ask you this, because we're going to talk about approval ratings. What do you make of the Democratic Party approval ratings right now being in such a dire position?
I'm not as bent out of shape of it as some others are, but obviously you'd rather they be higher.
Not good,
but,
right? But
right.
not necessarily a death sentence.
But it's going to be difficult when you're the out party to have clear leadership, a singular voice, and a defined platform that's going to rally the country around you. You know, you're inherently in a period of time where things have to be kind of hashed out in the open, and that's going to be, you know, kind of messy. And there's going to be certain bitter aftertaste of what happened, you know, prior that people, you know, haven't, you know, gotten over yet. But going into a midterm, it's not a referendum on Democrats. It's a referendum on the people in power, which are all Republicans. And those numbers going in the tank are far more relevant. Democrats are going to be in an easier position to move their numbers up since they have the obvious foil of people in power running the country into the ground. So I just want to overthink the project of how do Democrats fix this? I mean, it's not to say that it's not worth having some conversations, making some adjustments, pursuing. It's good to have the policy debates because like whatever policies you had 5 years ago aren't as relevant now. Yeah, a whole bunch of stuff has happened. You gotta clean. A big mess has been made that you gotta clean up, and so you gotta think through. Okay, what am I going to say to the public on how I'm going to fix this mess? And that requires some open debate and discussion. So I'm not saying it's a do nothing strategy, but you don't have to be so anxious about it because believe me, the Republicans are in a worse place than Democrats right now, and they're far more anxious about how they're going to fare in 2026 than you are.
Well, they certainly have a lot more to lose, right? Especially in the House with such a slim majority, which would be the most likely win for the Democrats. Let's flip over to the Republican side. Actually, no, one more thing on the Democratic side, and this will end this. In terms of the leadership that you mentioned, I also think that this is just a particularly awkward period for Democrats because they're also kind of fresh out of elders right now that aren't untainted by recent interactions with politics. Obviously the Clintons, there's a lot of baggage there between Bill and Hillary. Obama and Biden, we're still digging through everything that kind of happened through all that, and we aren't even to the Jake Tapper Alex Thompson book yet. So like there's not a whole lot of fresh people that could step out from the shadows and say, hey, everybody, calm down. Here's a peacemaking force here. So, but I also think that right now, to your point, throw stuff at the wall. I think it's very, very healthy right now for Democrats to say things that were kind of forbidden before, because now's the time. You're not going to really get penalized for saying a thing that would otherwise have gotten you criticized before. Like go nuts, say whatever you want.
But do that in the spirit of open debate. I don't think you want to. You need to be finger wagging a lot and saying you're the worst person in the world because you've advanced this idea. Have the conversation. Don't. Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm always of the belief that if you can't handle that internally, then you're not going to be able to handle it over the line when the other people start yelling at you. So it's like if you can't stand behind a thing and have people criticize you, then it is what it is. You need to. This is when these ideas need to toughen up. They need to take root. People need to believe in them. They need to believe that they're going to stay, that they're going to be there, not only in 2026, but also in 2028, if it is a good enough idea that you want people to marshal behind. So, but anyway, that's all stuff that we will see slowly germinate on the Democratic side. I'm very much of your opinion that right now, the congratulations, the Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And with that comes along the responsibility of A, doing things, and B, holding on to power. And so what I really wanted to talk to you about on that sense is, what do you think the biggest vulnerability, if you were in charge of training all the attention and all the fire from the Democratic Party onto one part of the Republican apparatus, what would you say is the weakest?
I think it's the combination of two things. It's the combination of Donald Trump purposefully throttling the economy while going well out of his way to enrich himself and the people in his circle. Corruption is never great, but if everyone else is making it up like bandits, it's a harder thing to complain about. Yeah. If you are actively violating law and ethics to take in billions from the crypto industry, and you're accepting luxury planes from countries with ties to terrorist organizations while jacking up everybody's grocery prices and tell everybody, hey, it's all going to work out someday. Just be patient. Yeah. Like, that's a bad stew for an incumbent. It's literally the opposite of anything any politician would do, like in governing 101. Yes. it's impossible to defend. Now, Trump has a certain agency here. Like, I think he's a kleptomaniac. I don't think he is capable of not stealing from people. So maybe that's not something that can change. Like after you've taken $2 billion out of your meme coin, you can say to Carter, I don't need your plane. I got $2 billion. I can buy my own plane, but he just can't. He can't help himself. But he could climb down on the tariffs. It is possible that he does that. It is possible he says, you know what?
I mean, he paused with China. As we record this Tuesday, he paused more than he was even signaling on Monday.
But let's have some perspective here, okay? He from China, he dropped from 145% to 30%. 30% is a very large tariff. It is not. Yeah. Don't let Trump Overton window you into nonsense. 30% tariff is huge. And Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, was on one of the Sunday shows saying like, no matter what, we're going to have a baseline of a 10% global tariff. That's not a small tariff.
Yes.
It's not totally insane, like 145%, where like you literally can't do any business at all, but you are still actively making a choice to increase people's prices with no obvious benefit. Certainly in the short term. I know they make a long-term argument this is going to bring manufacturing back to America and whatnot, but find me anyone of objective economic knowledge who believes that's what's going to happen. I mean, even if you brought back some manufacturing to the U.S., a lot of it's going to be robotic. It's not even going to create a lot of new jobs. And certain things that just can't be made here. Like, we're not going to grow cocoa plants here. We're not going to be doing a lot of domestic chocolate production. There's all sorts of things that just are being done in a ham-fisted way without any kind of sophisticated approach to how the global economy works today. You can't turn the clock back to the 19th century. Trump has this obsession with McKinley. And even McKinley's tariffs weren't super popular in the day. I mean, with the reason, I mean, I know I'm going down various rabbit holes here, but I mean, the reason Trump likes to say, like, we screwed up when we switched from a tariff to an income tax. We moved to an income tax because people were really mad about regressive tariffs. Yeah, in the 1890s, when they were suffering a 4-year Great Depression, called at the time the Great Depression. Yes, and people said, you know what, this system doesn't work. We're still paying us poor people are paying through the nose on these tariffs, while the rich people it's not hurting them. Maybe we need an income tax, and it took a long time to get the constitutional amendment to make it happen. And that's like the economy was a lot simpler than today, when there wasn't as much of an import-based economy, an interconnected economy. So, I mean, Trump's peddling something that just can't happen. And so if you're a Republican and you're on the ballot in 2026, there's some times that you say as a party, you know what? My guy's got a plan. I know it's going to be a little rough on the front end, but he explained it to me. And, by the time we get to 26, 28, it's going to pan out. Like Obamacare, like, people get the change and unsettling, but we stick with it. It's eventually going to be popular. I'm going to stick with it. Why would anyone have any confidence that Donald Trump knows enough about the economy to trust him that this is all going to work out? I mean, obviously he got to where he is today because people bought into this notion as some sort of economic sage. But if you're in Washington, you should know better than that. You should know that this is just pure impulse, pure id, no thought, no sophistication. And if you're on the ballot in 2026, that matters to you. And I think the cultish bonds are already starting to weaken. And here's a small example of that. This executive order yesterday where Trump says he's going to slash drug prices. Yes. That's an executive order because he could not get Republicans to agree to put it in the bill. Yes. If he had the juice, if he had the political capital, if he had the standing, they would say, whatever you say, Mr. President, we'll put it in. And you're starting to see Republicans say, I don't know about that one. I don't know if I should go down
I mean,
the path to hell with you.
This is already a pretty monstrous bill, which we could talk about as it is now making its way through the House. So all right, so let's take a look at, like, from your perspective, what are we watching then to see this deteriorate? We're watching inflation rate, we're watching price of goods.
Yeah, I mean, inflation's the biggie. We learned the hard way in 2024. Yeah. People don't like inflation.
Matters. Yeah.
And the tariffs haven't really hit yet. I mean, we've been reacting to the tariffs based on the market reaction.
Yes.
And so when the market eases up because Trump dropped China's tariffs from 145 to 30, you really, well, maybe it's going to be all right. But the rubber hasn't really hit the road in terms of what you see at the store. We only just started to see the ships from China have less stuff in them. It takes.
Well, I mean, yeah, and even the White House, I think Trump and Bessent. Well, Bessent is the one that I heard say it, that 145 was an embargo. It wasn't really even a tariff.
Correct.
It was a blocking of ships, and I think the reason why they wanted to make it such a big deal on Monday was, and this is something that I have found out from people in my life that are shipping from China, you pay the tariff from when it leaves the country. So there's a tremendous backlog of ships in China currently that we're all waiting, hoping for a thing like this to happen. And so the reason why they were so public about it was essentially a starter's gun to start people sending stuff over. But to your point, if you manufactured those goods on a lead time of anywhere between 9 months and 6 months to get it to market within a year, you had priced it out at a different tariff rate than what you're going to wind up paying. Granted, it's not 145%. Right. But none of this stuff is going to be more than you thought.
None of this has rippled through the economy yet. We haven't felt the price increases yet, and they're going to come unless Trump totally surrenders, which again could happen. Trump could say, "Forget the whole thing. I negotiate these deals, and they're the best deals, and it all worked out for them." He could always do that. But if he doesn't, the price grenades have not detonated yet.
Yes.
And if you're a Republican on the ballot, you got to worry about that because that's going to be felt for some time. And they're not going to get turned off on a dime. Even if Trump did surrender today, some stuff's, problems are in the queue.
The argument that I have heard of warning against the idea that we are going to see persistent and high inflation is that while 30% is certainly more than it was before coming out of China, for example, the goods there are cheap enough, lower gas prices and lower regulation. And, if they make these tax cuts permanent, are enough to stabilize from the importer side that by the time that it makes its way to Target or Walmart, we're not going to see the same kind of one-for-one price increases that you would say with, like, all right, the 10% tariff means that everything's going to be 10% more or 30% in China's case.
We don't know with any sort of precision how much you and I are going to pay more in effectively sales taxes because of Trump's tariffs, because they're still a moving target. We know that Trump wants to offset it through income tax cuts or other tax breaks in the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, which you and I know is technically called budget reconciliation. Now, you've heard numbers being thrown around, if you're reading about this at all, that they want a $4 trillion tax cut or a $4.5 trillion tax cut or a $5 trillion tax cut. Those are 10-year numbers.
Yes.
And they largely include simply the renewal of the 2017 tax cuts, which are expiring. That's not actually a new tax cut for you. That is just the prevention of a tax increase if nothing is done. There's not a whole lot being offered that are new tax cuts in this bill, but because the bill's not completed and the tariffs aren't totally set yet. So I can't tell you if these are going to fully offset or not. I'm highly skeptical that they're going to fully offset. And even if they just offset, that's not a great victory for the average taxpayer. You went through all this chaos and I'm at status quo? What did I get out of this? You told me I was going to get a tax cut. I didn't get a tax cut. I'm paying. I got something from you. I'm supposed to get something from you come next May. when I file my next set of taxes, but I'm paying more at the grocery store now. So again, if I'm a Republican, I'm not going into this with a lot of confidence. This is going to net out in a way that people are going to be happy. But a lot is still up in the air.
That would be the one criticism, because in general, I agree with you. Let me get to that. If I were running the Democratic Party, which nobody is volunteering me for currently, I would say that is the number one thing. It's always the economy. It's always the kitchen table issues. In fact, this is something that I was screaming on this show for weeks, is that when in my life, I was hearing from small business owners that were facing existential questions about their business due to the unpredictable nature of the Chinese trade war. I was like, what? Democrats should be bringing out small business owners every day saying, this was my life. I don't know whether or not I'm going to have a business tomorrow. This was totally reckless by the administration. And even if this drops, who knows exactly where that survives, but anchor the idea of chaos, anchor the idea that all of this stuff has real world consequences, and it is your friends and neighbors that are bearing the brunt of it. What I don't know, and I think the counterfactual to that, is that turns out global economics is hard. Many smart people take a lot of time trying to figure it out, and we don't know what the inflation rate is going to be in 6 months. We don't know what it's going to be when people go to the ballot box in 2026. And so if you put a lot of money and time into saying everything's more expensive, and then by the time that we get to 26, they don't feel more expensive, or people are swayed by no tax on tips or no tax on Social Security or overtime or something like that, that you have essentially owned goal yourself.
Yeah, you always have to be careful not to get ahead of things. But things that are in your face now is brazen corruption. Not even hiding it. You don't investigate very far for it. That Trump is making things very chaotic and uncertain for everybody else.
Yeah.
While he is guaranteeing enrichment for himself.
So tying these things together.
Correct.
That is the work. That is the political work, messaging wise, that needs to be done. Is that chaos and inflation for you, money and planes for them.
He's telling you. You be patient. It'll work out for you eventually. Meanwhile, I'm putting some money into my money bags over here for myself. Yeah. I don't have to wait. You have to wait. And look, his numbers are dropping, and the fact that his numbers are dropping complicates his ability to get the big beautiful bill passed. And so don't assume that there's reason to put the pressure on the vulnerable Republicans. So they're not inclined to take a gamble and hook themselves to Trump with this bill. And you're seeing a lot of difficulty with them getting consensus on it already, both from the moderates, the swing district Republicans, and the hardcore deficit hawks who don't like the gimmickry and want this to really be proven that that's going to lead to a balanced budget in short order, which these are impossible. It's impossible to meet all these demands.
They are not. They are not going to meet both of them. And,
the only way you get the bill,
somebody is going to have to eat a crap sandwich.
And the only way you get that is if Trump has enough political juice, to say, you know what, you're not getting your full loaf. Maybe it's even only a quarter loaf, but we're in this together, and we're all going to be better off if we stay together as a team. If that's not evidently true, I mean, take this SALT caucus, for example. So this is a state and local tax deduction, folks. In the first Trump tax bill in 2017, it had a cap on how much you could deduct from your taxes that you paid in state and local taxes. And this
these are primarily Republicans that are in blue states.
Well, New York, California, New Jersey. Yeah, it's very limited.
Very simple. Yes.
It's very limited, but you only can lose about 4 people on this bill. And the thing is, if there is no bill, the SALT cap goes away.
Yes.
So doing nothing benefits those in the SALT caucus. And you have to say to them, hey, Salt Caucus, you still don't want to have all these other taxes go up. You still don't want to see Trump be dragged down. It's really encouraging for us to stick together on this. Even I know you didn't get what you want on the salt thing, but we really got to stick together. If Trump's at 40%, maybe that argument doesn't fly. And if you got people like Chip Roy who are like, God damn it, I want this I don't want smoke and mirrors here. I wanted deeper spending cuts. I don't want you to be funny with the numbers about the tax cuts. And I'm in a safe seat. And I came here to balance this budget, and I've been snookered before. I'm not going to get snookered again. And if Trump said, "Well, if you do this, you're going to ruin my presidency," Chip Roy can say, "I don't care. You're gone." And I think I can survive my House race without you. I mean, I don't know if he's going to think that way, but he could. And the more you're hammering Trump and his numbers are low, the harder it's for Trump to ask for loyalty for that bill.
It's going to be interesting because I very much believe this week and next week is going to be the week where you're going to see the most firefight on it. This is when it's going through markups in the House, and you're going to see the conversations and the most posturing. I would submit to any Republicans that are in the House, even if you believe that there's a 3/4 chance you're going to get murdered in your seat in 2026. I don't know if the solution is to commit suicide now by taking the bill, but that is up to them, and that is their hill to summit. I would say on the Trump side, I've talked to people inside the Republican side of this on the House. I've asked them about the polling. I have heard there is not a whole lot to be swayed there. They know that the only way out is through with this bill, but the question is, everything is degrees. Right now, you saw a mid-50s polling dive to, in some cases, low 40s, right? Mm-hmm. We've seen some rebound. A YouGov poll just came out today that had him at 45. So that would suggest that there's some rebound from the low 40s. If that happens over the next couple weeks, and now he's floating back up to the high 40s, for example, I think that this is a non-starter. But if for whatever reason he starts trailing into the high 30s, I do think that you start to see some of these pressure burst spikes.
Once you go below 40, then the wheels can really come off.
It starts to get open season, as we saw with the Biden administration. That I had said previously that Trump was not really going to get. He wasn't going to be judged for the economy until about the summer. I judged it kind of like Biden with COVID, that you were going to give him about a couple months to figure it out. But then Liberation Day happened, and it's like, okay, this is a you break it, you buy it situation. Like the second that you start pulling out the gigantic chart that tanks the market, congratulations, you are now fully in charge of the economy.
Yeah,
I think in terms of the American people. Bill Scher, thank you so much for joining us, as always. Where can people find your work?
Washington Monthly, WashingtonMonthly.com. We also are on Substack at WashingtonMonthly.substack.com, and mostly on Blue Sky these days under my own name, Bill Scher.
All right. Well, everybody go ahead and check him out. He is one of our favorites. We always love to chat with him. Bill, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Take care.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. If you want to email me, it is theyoungamerican@gmail.com. All right, look, I got a bone to pick. Okay? I got a bone to pick with people. I'm just going to see this. I told everybody, man, I was explicit on Wednesday's episode. Don't send me $1. You're not getting it back. All right? We had this little thing. Huh? Where it was, oh, send me $1. I want to see who listens. I'll send them all back. I told you people. Yeah, I said it. You people. Stop sending me dollars. What do I get? I get on Venmo from Jared. Screw you. Keep the $1. Is that the language you want to use? Is that the language you want to use? That was on Venmo, by the way. Venmo, Justin-Young-20 on Venmo. Let me take a look at this PayPal. All right. Oh, how about this one? Oh, this is a real nice message. Don't tell me what to do. You're a washed up, underpaid, has-been pod jockey. Take this $1 and see if I care what you do with it. Okay, yeah, that's great. Oh, how about this one from Derek? Oh, up yours. Here's $2. Sincerely, a rube. Great, Derek. Great. Kiss your mother with that mouth. How about this, Randy? Suck it, nerd. And he gave me $1 too. Okay, so that's PayPal.me/payjury. PayJury. Cash App, PX3 cash. Letter P, letter X, number 3, cash. Okay? I'm just telling you. I'm going to preemptively say it. I dare you to send me $1 because I'm going to, no, in fact, no, you want to know what? I don't dare you. Never send me $1. Whatever you do, if you wake up and go to sleep today, the one thing that you can do to know that you have lived a life for which I order you to live is to not send me $1. Certainly don't have any kind of insult, any kind of creative insult. Oh, you're a gray-haired nobody. Oh, I'll bet you're going to use this $1 to write another segment about journalism. Whatever you do, don't send your most creative insult about me with $1 to either paypal.me/payjury, Venmo, Justin-Young-20, or Cash App, PX3 cash. Don't do it. Okay? Don't. You can always send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. Only way to get bonus coverage, 2 bonus episodes each and every week. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes, as we mentioned. It's essentially $3 a week, price of a cup of coffee, or do $99 for the entire year. If you add all that up for all of the episodes that you get, less than $1 an episode. I mean, come on. At this point, you're going to be making money. Of course, it is our Titanic. No. When is our? We haven't landed on this. We're still workshopping our fanatical, our phenomenal, our phenotypical founding tier. Either way, that's the only way that you get your name read on the show. L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes. Oh, yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB, Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Checkers, Gloria, my mom. By the way, I was on a business call with my mom today. How funny is that? At the end of the call, I said, it was a pleasure meeting you, Gloria. I hope you have a nice upcoming business quarter. It was good. Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc. You want your name read on the show? One place to go. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. I hope everybody has a great weekend. It's heating up a little bit. Get your shorts on. Make sure you buy your flip-flops for the season. Book your summer travel. Bet on the ponies. Preakness is happening. But we'll be back with you on Sunday if you are one of our paying members. We'll be back with you next Wednesday where we will get all the way in on the final negotiations for the big, beautiful bill. It's going to be a bloodbath in the House, and we'll get into this Biden book. It's going to be a good time. Till then, this is your old pal, Justin Robert Young. Say it. Some shows talk about politics. Others talk about politics and still more discuss politics. But this is the only show that dares discuss. Oh. 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.